When I was a child, I often dreamed about living on water houses that floated, streets made of glass, and gardens that swayed gently with the waves. I never thought such a dream could one day become real, but years later I found myself standing on the deck of a floating city, surrounded by endless blue horizons and the hum of technology beneath my feet. It all began when I was offered a chance to work on an international project called Aquanova, the world's first large-scale floating city. Built in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, it was designed to be sustainable, eco-friendly, and self-sufficient. Everything from the energy systems to the schools was powered by renewable sources. I had studied environmental engineering and English communication, so being selected felt like the opportunity of a lifetime. When I first arrived, I could hardly believe my eyes. The city looked like a futuristic island, divided into circular platforms connected by wide floating bridges. Each platform had its own purpose: housing, agriculture, research, education, and recreation. Solar panels covered the rooftops, and wind turbines turned gracefully in the sea breeze. My apartment was small, but perfectly designed. Through my window, I could see dolphins swimming nearby and the soft reflection of the sunrise on the ocean. On my first morning, as I walked to the community center, I felt a strange calm, a serenity that came from being surrounded by water, far from the noise of traditional cities. English was the main language spoken on Aquanova since people came from all over the world: Japan, Brazil, Germany, Kenya, and many other countries. Every conversation was a mix of accents and expressions. It was like living in a classroom where English connected everyone. During lunch breaks, we often practiced together. I remember one of my colleagues saying, "Here, English isn't just a language. It's our lifeline." Working there was challenging but exciting. My job was to monitor the city's water purification systems. Every day, I had to check the balance between technology and nature. One day, I was explaining the process to a group of students visiting from another floating city. I said, "This system turns seawater into clean, drinkable water." One boy raised his hand and asked, "Does the ocean ever get tired of helping us?" His question made me smile. It reminded me that even in this modern world, we still needed to stay humble before nature. Life on the floating city was peaceful, but not without difficulties. During strong storms, the waves made the whole city rise and fall like a giant cradle. At first I felt dizzy, but soon I got used to it. The city's design allowed it to stay stable, even in rough weather. Engineers called it adaptive architecture. It was a perfect example of how innovation could blend with nature's rhythm. Evenings were my favorite time. After work, we would gather on the main deck, where people played guitars, shared stories, and watched the sunset melt into the sea. I often took my notebook and practiced English writing while listening to the sound of the waves. Sometimes I wrote about the people I met, like Maria, the marine biologist who studied coral gardens beneath our city, or Omar, the chef who created dishes using sea-grown vegetables. Over time, the floating city became more than a workplace, it became a community. We celebrated cultural festivals, shared languages, and learned from one another. I realized that while the city floated on water, its true foundation was connection. It didn't matter where you were from. What mattered was the shared dream of living in harmony with the planet. One memorable event was when a delegation from a coastal nation came to visit. Their government wanted to learn how floating cities could help solve the problem of rising sea levels. I was chosen to give a presentation in English, of course. I practiced for days with my AI assistant, making sure my pronunciation and grammar were perfect. When the day came, I stood before them and said, "The future of humanity may not be found on land, but on water." The audience applauded warmly. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. As months passed, I realized that living on a floating city changed the way I saw the world. Everything was interconnected. People, technology, and nature. We learned to recycle every drop of water, grow food in vertical farms, and generate power from ocean currents. Every innovation came with a lesson in responsibility. One night, as I stood under the stars, I thought about how far humanity had come. Centuries ago, explorers sailed the seas in search of new lands. Now, we were building our own floating worlds. I whispered to myself, maybe this is what the future looks like. Not escaping nature, but living with it. Learning English through this experience made the journey even richer. It allowed me to share ideas, teach others, and understand the dreams of people from every continent. It taught me that language is more than communication, it's connection, collaboration, and creation. Now, whenever I look out over the calm ocean, I remember that little dream I had as a child. I may not have known it then, but I was always meant to live on water, not just to float, but to grow, to learn, and to build a future where humanity and nature sail together.